Here he comes.
All right, how's that? Is that good? My name's Kelly, and I'm a beekeeper. Did anybody hear that? Anybody scared? I was. There we go. That's better. It's a little less dramatic there. All right. My name's Kelly Hill. I'm from all over the place. Just to give you a little history on my life. Been associated with the Free Methodist Church for 57 years, 3 months, and 17 days. That's how old I am. My father's a retired Free Methodist pastor living in Spring Arbor, and he's the one that got me turned on to the bees. Been doing it for about 20 years, and about 2 years ago, he said, I just don't know if I can do this anymore. So my brother and I loaded up a trailer and went up and picked up the bees and relocated them to out on Leatherwood Road here in Lawrence County. So been beekeeping for about 2 years now. Got to have my cheat sheet here. All right, as I said, Dad kind of got me into this business or into the beekeeping, but Marvella has to put up with me, so she's my wife of 23 years, and she helps out along the way of bottling and all, so thank you. First thing I guess I want to talk about is the bees themselves, or the equipment that we have for beekeeping. Of course, this is required. I've seen videos of guys that go out there to their hives and are just, oh, you're not going to find me doing that. I've been stung with this on, let alone without any protection. So, gear, head to toe. Of course, we got to have our trusty little tools to work in our hives with. Little pry bar to kind of pry lids off, and then we have a little pry bar here where you can actually get into the hives and get the frames out from the hives. Your hive is made up of mainly what we call a brood chamber. This is where the bees live. There are different layers that you can put on top for later on for harvesting the honey. This is called an inner cover. This gives a little protection from the outside, so like in the summertime if it gets hot, it can kind of give it a little bit of breathing room for the bees to have some air. Air is very important to have nice flow. When you have a hive, you want to make sure that you have it tilted forward just a little bit, so if there's any water that gets in the hive, it runs out. Too much water, it will damage your hives, so you don't want to have too much water in there. On my hives, I use a Queen Excluder. What this does, I put this over the main chamber, so the queen has to stay down inside the brood chamber all the time. she can't get through this mesh. Worker bees are a lot smaller. They can come up through this mesh to get up to where they can build the honey into the honeycombs. Your average frame, starting out, it's going to look something like this before the bees even get started. It's a wax coating, and it has a pre-started hexagon shape, which is natural to what the bees do. They are natural at making these things into a hexagon, and it's just amazing to see how they build this out into perfect form, and then be able to fill those up with honey, and then they put a cap over that. Here's one where they have just started doing the foundation, just starting to get some wax onto that. And then here's one that's been all waxed over. I could put this in. The bees don't have to work as hard to try and fill that up with honey. So when they bring the nectar in, fill this up, they'll cap it off, and then I can harvest it at a later time. My best friend right here. This is a smoker. I usually use straw, and then there are pellets that you could buy to help keep the heat going. And you fill this up, light it up, close it. It's got a little bellow on there, so you can smoke your bees, and it helps calm them down. They know, hey, something's about to happen, let's gather up. You're still going to have a few of the guard bees that are going to go, hey, go away. But this helps kind of calm them down some. So this is a Darrell Hill special right here. Over the winter months, I like to feed my bees. I want to make sure they're healthy. I don't take more honey than I need to. I make sure they have plenty of resources to get through the winter. And in addition to that, I can put what we call a candy board on top of the hive, and the bees can come up on warmer days and take it's a mixture of what I use is corn syrup and sugar and some bee pollen. Mix that up, heat it up to where it's a candy-like substance, hard candy, and they can come up and eat on that in the wintertime. So that'll keep them nice and happy in the winter. On the front of my hives in the wintertime, I put what they call an entrance reducer, because believe it or not, mice like to get in here in the winter and they will make a mess of your hive. So I put a little entrance reducer in here to where the bees can still get in and out of the hive if they need to, but it limits access for any other critters to get in and try and say, hey, here's a nice warm spot. All right, now there's 3 types of bees in a hive. You have your queen, you have your worker bees, and you have your drones. It takes all 3 to make the hive work. Queen is what she is. She's the queen of the hive. She's the one that produces the eggs that produce the bees to keep going on and producing. Their average life cycle is about 2 to 5 years for the average queen. And they are about twice as long as any of the other bees in the hive. So you get into a hive and you're looking to see how your queen is, and you've got an average of about 40,000 bees in a hive. It's kind of hard to spot that queen because everybody's moving around and you're looking and oh, there she is. So some people get a marker and mark them so that they can easily see them. I just kind of use my bifocals and try to see. Drones. They're the only male bee in the hive. Their sole purpose is to mate with the queen. Once they mate with the queen, they die. Short life cycle for the drone. So, but that's their only purpose in a hive. Now your worker bees, that's what you're going to see out and about. You'll see them in the flowers, out gathering water, different things. They gather the nectar to bring into the hive. They guard the hive. They will make sure and try and protect their hive. They care for the queen. They'll bring in special jelly that they make and feed to the queen to keep her happy. They clean the hive. When a bee dies, they will haul the bees out of the hive and throw them out. If there's insects that try to get in the hive, they try to get those out. In the summertime, they use their wings to try and cool off the hives. They actually have bees that bring in water, and it's almost like an air conditioner where they try to keep the hive cooler by fanning their wings to cool off the hive to keep it at an ideal temperature for them. In the wintertime, the worker bees will cluster together, and they'll do the same action, only they will use their muscles to create heat so that the hive stays at a warm enough temperature that they can survive through the winter. Now, the life cycle of a worker bee kind of differentiates. During the summer, they can live up to 8 weeks. In the winter months, when they're not doing as much, they can live for about 4 months. So, depending on what time of season that they are hatched, then depends on how long their life cycle can be. How many of you have ever seen a swarm of bees? They're fun. I've caught one swarm. They're aggressive, they can be, but the main reason that a hive will want to swarm is either the colony has grown so big that they've outgrown their hive and they've said, hey, we need more room. The queen will say, okay, let's go, and she'll take half the hive with her. And that's when you'll see the different swarms that you see about. That leaves the rest of the bees in the hive going, hey, within 15 minutes of the queen leaving, they know that we're without a queen. They start working on having a queen. The cells that are inside this brood chamber, you have your queen cells. They're about the size of a peanut, if you ever see one. And they house the queen. And they'll probably do 3 or 4 or 5 different peanuts inside there just to make sure that they can get one viable queen. Once that queen comes out of its shell, she goes with her stinger and kills all the other queens. She's going to be the ruler. She's going to take over. She doesn't want to have a chance of anybody else trying to take over that hive. And she will immediately go to those other peanuts and stick them all. Some of the things that can cause a hive to die off: poor ventilation. Mites are a big issue right now with our hives. They get in there, they get on the back of the bees, and they cause havoc. And I've lost 2 or 3 hives just because of mites that have gotten into the hives, not knowing it over the winter months. So you don't want to go out in the winter and pull it up and look, but if you get a warm day, it's always a good idea to just kind of check on your bees. But there are treatments that you can give the bees that help with the mite population, as well as they're coming out now with a variation of bees where they are mite resistant. I bought 2 new hives this year of bees that are mite resistant. They are aggressive. They are a little bit different than the other bees that I have. So I don't like going in their hive very much. When I do, I try to make it quick. Pesticides is another thing that's hard on the bees. When we're spraying the pesticides on our crops and things, and then you have your bees coming in and trying to collect the nectar, and these pesticides are very harmful to the bee population. So that's another consideration that may happen to the bees, that the hive dies off. And of course, last year I didn't realize that I had a hole in the side of one of my boxes. And when I went out in March or April to check on my hives, there were no bees in there. I thought, what happened? Mouse. Mouse got in there, had a nice nest. He had ate plenty of honey all winter long and was happy to have a place to stay. So it's good to check your boxes and make sure there's no holes in them where a mouse can get in. Thus the interest reducers as well. So basically on bees, on making the honey, they'll go out, they'll gather the nectar, they'll bring it back and put it into those hexagon frames, and then they fan that until the mixture becomes ripened. And once the honey is ripe enough, they'll put a cap on that honey. So once that's all done, I wait until I have, Dad always would go and put, he just would harvest in the fall. I kind of like doing it twice a year just so I know how my bees are doing. So this year I harvested in June, and then I'll harvest again later this month, just to make sure that there's no mites or whatever going on inside there to keep me from being able to harvest. But the process is to remove the frames from the hive, keep all the bees into the hive. I've got a little brush that I can brush the bees back into. I take them in and put them in a different box. Once I get all that done, then I'll take them up to my barn where I've got a place set up that I can actually do the cutting of the caps. And the caps on these, I just take a knife and cut the cap off, the wax cap, and I save that wax. Cut both sides of the frames with the wax off, and I've got a centrifuge that has 12 frames in it, and I can put 12 holders, and I can put 12 frames in that, turn on the switch, it starts spinning, open it up, and out comes the honey. So it's been a fun process. Once I get all the honey spun out that I can from all my frames, then I actually will take them, put them through a strainer. And I kid people, they say, what do you use for a strainer? I said, well, old sock, After I've been weed eating or something, I'll just take my sock, and it just adds to the flavor of the honey. Isn't that right, Libby? It's a cheesecloth type material that I use. It's a cloth that there's little particles of the wax that can get into the honey after it's been spun out into the bucket. So I always strain my honey, trying to get any of the contaminants out before I bottle it. And then I try to warm up my tubes so that honey flows a lot better when it's warmer and easier for bottling. So main thing that determines taste of honey. I've had honey from different places, and people have said, oh, I've got honey from here and honey from there, and it's all different. You're right, it is different. Because wherever the bees are getting the nectar from, that's where you're going to get your flavor. I've got a lot of clover out in my place, so I got a little bit more of a clover flavor to the honey. I know people in Illinois that have persimmon trees, and they have more of a persimmon taste to their honey. Jazz, the honey that you had, the flavor of it that was different that you got from Tennessee, it's all flavored different. You can go out to California to the almond orchards that they have bees in. That honey is going to taste different than honey from here. So it all depends on what they have to eat on to be able to gather their nectar to see what kind of flavor of honey you'll have. And it kind of depends on the season. Early on, what flowers are blooming versus, later on in the season as to what they're going to gather from for getting the flavor of the honey. A lot of times my first cut is usually a lighter color, and then in the fall it's usually darker. So the wax that I cut off from the frames, I try to keep that wax, and a lot of times the frames will have excess wax on the outside of the frames, and I haven't done it yet, but I'm wanting to melt that wax down. And the different uses that you can do with the wax is amazing. First thing comes to mind, candles. You make candles with that wax. Lip balm, lotion, and even put it on your drawers or windows to lubricate your windows so they slide better. I hadn't heard that. I thought, that's interesting. And of course, honey itself has been used for years as a medicinal purposes. A lot of people say, oh, if you have your local honey, it'll help your allergies. I'm a firm believer in that. I'm not sure that that's scientifically proven, but that's, if you can have local honey, the local allergens, it can be helpful. It's been used as an anti-inflammatory. It's an antioxidant, antibacterial agent, and people even used it on burns. Say it works. I don't know. I've never put honey on a burn because I didn't want to waste the honey. But how many of you ever had a cough and you wanted to kind of soothe your throat? Spoonful of honey. Put it in some tea, whatever. Honey is good for what ails you when you're not feeling well. They even say it promotes healing of wounds. Like I said, I don't know if I'm going to promote the healing of a wound with my honey, but that's another use that they have said that they use it for. So basically up here I just got a chart, and I'll have it out front, or you can come up and look at it as well. But it's just the life cycle of the bee, how long it takes for a queen to be born, usually after about 14 days from when that peanut starts to when it actually can come out. Your worker bees are about 21 days, and your drones are about 24. Worker bees, during their lifespan, they start out kind of at the bottom of the heap. When they're first born, they have to do cleaning duty. They're put on cleaning duty. They're newborn bees. They clean the cells. As they get a little bit older, then they start feeding the other larvae that are in the hive. Then they can start producing the wax, and then they can actually start going out and harvesting from the flowers and water and stuff as they get later in life as an adult bee. So how can this translate into bees and the kingdom? Well, I found it interesting. I knew of bee stories in the Bible, and as I've researched, I came across the story in Judges 14, where Samson was with his family, and they went on a journey. And while they were out, Samson was attacked by a young lion, and he tore the lion's jaws apart, killed it. Didn't tell his parents about it. They went on. Well, it was several months later, it had to be several months, that he went back and found a swarm of bees inside that carcass of that lion that he had killed. And he took that honey and took it to his parents and to his girl that he was seeing and shared the honey. And this is just kind of a picture of life where, bees and honey, result in pleasure and strength, but it came out of death. And I think, man, how long did it take those bees to get into that carcass and to be able to start producing honey? Well, it usually takes at least 4 or 5 months before bees start making honey. I can't imagine the smell from that carcass after 4 or 5 months, what kind of smell it'd be to even go and try and think, oh, this is going to taste good. Moses led the Israelites to where? The land of milk and honey. That was the promise that God made them, was to take them to the land of milk and honey. And I just so happen to have pictures I had a cousin that went to Greece recently and came back, and he sent me this picture. He says, you know what this is? I said, I have no clue what that is. Here, I'll give you a few. Take one, pass it around. I'm not bending over with this suit on. Too many times that I've ripped the crotch out of it, and that's not good. Oh, you land on your head, do you, Laura? Yes, the very first time I got the bees to Bedford, I was putting the bees in place and not realizing that, I am a big guy, so I have a large size suit that's made for somebody that's about 6'4", and I'm only about 5'10". So when I went to do the smart thing of making sure that I didn't hurt my back putting my bees in place, I did the old, and guess what? I heard something I didn't want to hear. It was just a matter of a couple of minutes before 4 or 5 bees found that spot. And it was not pleasant. My wife says, "Oh my, what's he doing up there running around?" Well, I'll tell you what I was doing, trying to get out of the way. So what I've shown you here is this is an ancient smoker from around 1600 to 1500 BC. Smokers from back that far back. I got to looking, and they estimate the time frame of Moses going into the, leading the Israelites to the land of milk and honey to be about 1450 BC. So you're looking at something that could have been around during the time of Moses. I just find that interesting that there's anything left, archaeologically like that would survive the test of time. And to think, man, how many people use that? It's just, I found that just to be able to think, man, Moses' time, how real can that be? It's awesome. One of the other things that I found in the Bible, which I was familiar with, comes from the New Testament, looking in Matthew 3 and 4, and it talks about John the Baptist. And do we know what the diet of John the Baptist was? Locust and wild honey. That's all he had. Or that's what they say. So it's like, you got to admire a guy that goes in for wild honey. Okay. I think that's about all I've got for that. Some of the religious symbols of looking at these from a church's standpoint. As a church, we try to be industrious and purposeful in the work that we do. Everybody has a job, in the church, and we're all there just to promote the kingdom, much like the bees are trying to promote a hive. Their lives are short, but willing to serve their community, whether as workers who gather the pollen or nurse the young, or the drones who live to serve the queen, and the queen born to rule. They respect leadership and serve one queen in their hive. They work together to prosper the hive by bringing nectar and pollen back to the hive, where they feed their young with the pollen and make honey with nectar. Each member of a bee colony has a role, just like all of us. We have our roles. They're fiercely protective of their queen and their hive. They are peace-loving and attack only when threatened. As honeybees die after stinging an enemy, they show their willingness to protect their home and family. And that's one thing about a honeybee. They are the only bee that can only sting you once. They have a barb on their stinger that sticks in your skin, and when they pull back, it pulls it right out of their abdomen, and they die. So you're not going to get stung more than once by that bee. Now, if you get 20 or 30 of them going at you, that's a little different story, but you're not going to be like a hornet where he can just keep coming at you and nailing you. They produce honey, which is valued for its sweetness and regarded as a sign of wealth and plenty. And I think of King Solomon talking about how the sweetness of honey and wisdom and those type of things that can bring to us. Honey is associated with God's provision of abundance. It's sweet and good to eat, and is linked to wisdom. That's in Solomon. So, all right. That is about all of my knowledge that I have on bees. I've got a little bit of knowledge, but it's just been a journey. I was going to tell you, this is not my first love. I do love it. Of course, when we came to Bedford in 1976, I was just a 11-year-old kid, didn't know what I wanted to do. Was able to, fortunately, go to work at Ford. Worked there for 23 years. Of course, as we all know, the factory closed down. And at the ripe old age of 43, I had to go back to school. You know how hard it is for a 43-year-old to go back to school to learn a new vocation and be successful? I don't know if I'm successful, but I'm told I am. So, some of you may know me from working at the hospital. Some of you may have had to put up with me as your X-ray tech, doing your CTs, doing your chest X-rays, and it's been a blessing for me to be able to minister to people that hurt, be there for people when I can, and when they want to pray, I'll pray with them. They're scared. I understand. So I feel blessed to be able to have the job that I have. So, all right. With that, I do have questions that I want to ask. Didn't tell you all there was going to be a quiz, did I? Were you all listening? Prizes are involved. I need a volunteer to help me because somebody raises their hand. I'm not going to be able to see who raised it first. Well, thank you, Pastor. Pastor Adam, come on up here. All right. So, first question. Are you ready? I know some of you may be. Get those arms limbered up. Okay. Are you ready? How many years have I been beekeeping? Two. Two is the correct answer. No, once you win once, you're out. Once and done. Who is my mentor? Who'd you get? Huh? Mary Alice? Very good. Oh, you're going to be my runner too? Hey, now that's valuable stuff. It's almost like gold. All right. Which bee in the hive mates with the queen? All right. Drone. The drone. Now I'm going to take multiple answers for this question. So, what can be one cause of a hive dying? Mice, pesticides, bugs, mites. All right, I've got 3 more chances to win. They are. This is last year's. This is the fall color. This is from this year. You can see the difference in the color.
Very observant.
Name one way wax from a hive can be used. Were you watching? I thought I saw somebody over here. I don't know. You got them out, you watching the balcony too?
I was looking at you.
We'll go to the next one, okay? Are you ready? Do I need somebody else up here to help me? Scott, come on up. Oh, I seen your hand go up, so come on. All right. Peel your eyes out, boys. Here we go. Who in the New Testament had a diet of locusts and wild honey? Now you have to agree on who it is. Nick? John the Baptist. Are you ready? Who led the Israelites to the milk of honey, land of milk and honey? Who led the Israelites to the land of the milk and honey? Very good. All right, last one. You've had time to think about it now. Are you watching?
Nobody's watching the balcony.
That's all right.
Unfair game.
Name one way wax can be used from a hive. Oh. On doors, that's right. Lubricating them. All right. Depends. The question is, how much can I harvest in a year? I started this year out with 5 hives, I thought. When I got out there, I was down to 3 hives. So that cut production way back. And then I decided, well, I'm going to use one of these hives to make comb honey. That's a long process. Takes a lot of resources from the bees to make comb honey. So with my first cut, I had 50 pounds of honey. Compared to last year, I did 125 pounds of honey on my first run. So I bought 4 more hives. I'm up to 7. I might be able to get some honey off the new hives. Generally, the first year, it takes them a little while to get built up. I took 2 hives over to my brother's house, Wendell. Don't hold that against me. And one of those hives is really going gangbusters, so I think I could probably get a few frames off of it. And so we'll see what happens this fall when I harvest. I'd like to maybe pull 100, but we'll see. Mm-hmm. And it was real dark. Yep. That's just the way the wax is when it gets older. So the bees will produce the same. They're going to fill that wax, whether it's new wax or if it's old wax. If you have a drawn out frame, it just saves so much time to be able to fill that up instead of them having to produce the wax. So.
One more question.
Sure.
The queen, you said when one of those hives, sometimes the hive will get real full, and they will make a swarm and go somewhere else, and the queen goes too.
She goes with them. She'll take half the hive.
Where does the queen come from to be back in the hive?
The worker bees realize it within about 15 minutes that when the queen's gone, they know, oh, it's time to start making a cell just for a queen, and they'll make a cell queen for the. That's how they take the already cells that are in the hive that have already been laid, but they feed it what they call royal jelly, so that it can produce a queen. So. And they'll do, like I said, they can have up to 4 or 5 peanuts in there to try and get a queen reared. But like I said, as soon as that first one comes out, it's all over for the other 3. You might as well forget it. The race is over. So.
Kelly,
Yes.
as long as the queen is in the hive, they are never making another queen bee. Is that correct?
Unless they feel like the queen is getting weak. If they feel like she's not producing enough eggs for the hive and that she's been around for too long, they can sense her getting weak. Then they will build another, go for another queen.
Explain why you want to keep the queen in the lower box.
Queen in the lower box. I like to have a queen excluder only because when I put my boxes on top that are strictly for honey, I don't want to have larvae of bees that have been pollinated in my honey. So the queen cannot come up and lay eggs in the honey.
So what do you do with the honey down the lower box?
Leave it. Anything that's in that lower box, I leave for them for the winter.
You never take that out.
Nope. Nope. I could rotate it around, but and on there you have you have the peanut size for a drone on a frame that's in the brood chamber. Almost looks like a bullet. They're a little bit bigger than a worker bee, and it kind of pops out just a little bit from the frame. And then your worker bees is just a small oval. So you can definitely tell, okay, I've got all these worker bees that are going to be born because they've been sealed up. And then you can tell how many drones are in there. And then if you see queens starting to form, then you want to kind of keep an eye and see if they're going to swarm or go from there. But like I said, it's been an interesting 2 years of learning, and it's the curve of I should have done this, but yeah, that's why I put the excluder on there, so the queen cannot go up and lay eggs into where I want to harvest honey. But I don't take any more honey than what I have to, so that they have their honey for the winter. People say, "Oh, you're cruel. You're taking their resources." No, I leave their resources in their chamber for them, so they survive during the winter, and add on candy to help them out. Yes.
The whole process seems like a beautiful example of God's handiwork.
It is. It's.
Engineer all that. These bees know what to do.
They are. It's like I said, everybody has a job, and
The one part that seems kind of harsh is when the queen kills the other unborn queen.
yeah.
And I just wondered if you think that was part of the way God originally created queen or bees.
I would assume so. I think that's probably the way queens have been. So I think it's part of their nature. I don't know for sure, but that's. Yes. Her stinger's not going to stick inside of a bee, but when a bee stings you in your skin and they get that barb in, that's what kills them, because that barb stays inside your skin. Because when they pull away, that barb is still in your arm or upper thigh or forehead. She has a stinger as well. Yeah. I think that they have a barb, but I don't think that they have to go as far to be able to kill. Whereas if you're guarding the hive, you're going all in and going for, and they're kind of a booger to get out of your arm. But if you don't get them out, and I've talked to ER doctors at night, and I said, hey, and I've tried to get their take on it, and they say, one guy says, oh, just take a pair of tweezers and pull it out. Okay. Another one says, oh no, don't take a pair of tweezers. I said, why not? He said, well, you think about it. You grab a hold of that stinger and you press on it, that's pushing all the poison back in your arm. Hadn't thought about that. So they say take a sharp edge or credit card or something and try and flick it out. That's the best way. Which you get one on your back of your leg and you're going, how am I going to get this? Marvella's at work. It's too late. So, other questions? Yeah, Jess. Good question. 3 to 5 miles bees will go to gather nectar, water. Usually 3 miles is about their distance, but I've heard they can go up to 5 miles away from their hive just to get nectar and water or resources for the hive. Depends on if you've got hives around or yeah. It used to be millions and millions of colonies, and I saw where it's cut in half since in the last 20 years. We have half as many colonies in the United States as what we used to have. I mean, it's like I forget the example, but say we had 20 million, we're down to 10 million. So it's half of what it used to be. Nick. I started with 3 hives.
And now you're up to 7.
I am.
So where do you get the bees for those other 4 hives?
I bought 2 hives from the local beekeepers association. There's a Lawrence County beekeepers that I basically on Facebook I can keep up with them because they meet on Tuesday nights, and guess where I'm at on Tuesday nights? All night long. So I don't get to go to any meetings, but they took orders for, they were bringing in what they call a nuke, and these nukes have already established small colony of bees that already have the queen, they have the worker bees, they have some brood, and a little bit of honey built up in it. So you get 5 of these frames, so it's already built up. So I got 2 of them from them, and then the verosimite resistant ones I bought from a guy over and that sells bees over in Greensburg, Indiana. Tree City Bees. So, and there's a Nuker 5 as well. So, not cheap, but hopefully it'll be an investment.
Have you ever picked up a wild hive?
He wants me to tell my story. Is that last year? Year before? Swarm. That was last year, wasn't it? Last August? Yeah. So it was, I had to go to work, and Marvella says, "Look at all the bees in that tree." I said, and there was a big hive in one of the walnut trees, and I said, "I got to go to work. I can't deal with it." So when I got home the next morning, I went straight out there, and they were gone. It was like they don't stick around for 24 hours, maybe tops. So I thought, well, one of my hives swarmed. There went half of the hive. And it was a couple days later, and I was actually off work, and Marvella says, "What? Okay, you tell the story." They're back. It was that afternoon when you went to work, yeah. They're back. I was like, oh, they were in a different tree. Oh. So I had looked online at this brilliant idea on how to catch a swarm of bees. All you have to do is put a white cloth on the ground, take your bee box out there with some frames in it, put some lemongrass oil over the entrance, and that is a natural scent that they like. Then you just reach up to that branch and shake it, and they drop down onto the cloth. I thought, yeah, what can go wrong with this? It went perfect. I had my suit on, I shook, they went down, and they just started filing right into that beehive. And that evening I went out, they were all inside that hive, and I moved them back to where I keep my bees. That's the only one I've ever caught, but it was kind of neat to, and you can probably hear my excitement in the video, when they're marching. I mean, it was just amazing. They was just all these bees, and then all of a sudden they just start forming up, and they're like, hey, we like this. Oh, hey, we found a new home. So it's pretty neat. It's, yeah, there's a pheromone that they are used to kind of smelling like, so they are attracted to it.
How safe is it to have a hive? Like, yeah, kids, are honeybees family friendly?
Renee, are honeybees family friendly? We have a swimming pool, and we've had people out to swim, and little Jack will be out there swimming and all, but the bees will come down and look at you, but they usually take off. As far as mowing, I'll get within, from me to pasture, a couple of lanes away from it. But if you watch a hive, my hives, it's like a flight pattern. I mean, it's like an airport. They're just boom, boom, they're just flying in and out. So if you're going to stand in front of this hive right here, yeah, you're going to get nailed. I mean, if you don't have anything on, they're going to. But I can get this close and feel comfortable as far as being able to look at them. I usually put this suit on if I need to weed eat. If I want to get up here, the sound of the weed eater, they don't like that too well. But try and keep stuff cut down so they have a clear path going inside of there. So as far as being around them, if you're 5 yards, 10 yards away, I've not had any issues with.
You've got one hive that's very aggressive.
I do have a couple that are aggressive right now, but I start out with straw, and I'll even put little sticks of wood in there, and then there's actually smoker pellets that help that smoke, that create more smoke, so that longer lasting, once they get heated up, they, keep it going. All right. They will try, if they find a hive that's not strong, they'll go in and try to rob honey out of the other hive. So, yeah, that's one of those things you have to keep an eye on as well. You got robber bees that I've got, here next month I'll be starting to feed them sugar water to supplement. And I have a box that I put on actual top inside of the hive and put the lid on it so that only the bees in this hive can get to that sugar water. Some people will put sugar water out on the front of the hive and other bees can come to it. I don't want them to feel like they can rob. So I've put all my sugar water inside the top of the hive, and they can go right up through the hole there and get to the sugar water, and it's a good supplement for them to get them stored up for winter.
You ever have anybody help you check your hive?
I have. They didn't like it. It's kind of it's a little unnerving when you've got bees, even with a hood on, pop, pop, and you can hear them hitting. And if your ankles aren't like covered up real good, that's a good place for them to get you. But this year I found out the hard way, you need to inspect your suit thoroughly. Okay? Never in my wildest dreams would I have thought that the mesh on my hood would get a crack in it. Never would have thought about it. I found it pretty quick because I heard it. I thought, boy, that sounds awful close. And then I felt it in my forehead. Got nailed right here. I thought, what? And then I could hear it in my ear. And it was a little, when you heard the buzzing just from this, it was right there. And I ran to the barn and I had about 5 or 6 inside my head, inside my helmet there. And come to find out, no video footage of that. But the seam of the nylon had cracked, and I didn't realize it up in here, and they found it and they got in. So it pays to inspect your gear. You can. There are different flowers that they like. As far as right now, what I'd like to do is tear up my whole. I've got 6 acres out where I live, and I'd like to put maybe an acre or 2 just of clover for them to eat on. So sounds like Wendell's are liking the pumpkins, though. Not close. They're, I've got a few, but I have one neighbor that he has a huge garden that he puts out, and he saw that I had bees, and he was like, yes, thank you. And it, beneficial for him and me as well, because he's got fruit trees, and he has a huge garden with tomatoes and, just everything, corn. And so I will come down to my porch every once in a while, and I'll find 15 ears of corn on it. Nice little bonus to having the bees, I guess. So. A little more. All right. Thank you for listening.
Breathe in, Kelly. Thank you so much, Kelly. Full disclosure, he took me back into the channel. I said, Kelly,
Wouldn't it be crazy if you took the lid off that and bees just start going everywhere as you're presenting? I said, it'd be crazy if you had a live hive here. He said, come on back to the chapel. Just listen to him. That's all. You didn't bring bees. And he opened the door, and I heard him buzzing. And I was like, oh, this cat's crazy enough to bring live bees in this church. So until I saw the phone, I mean, if you really wanted to get me, Kelly, if you would have, like, tripped and knocked that hive over halfway down the aisle, I would have screamed. So thank you so much for sharing. Yes, he is. He is. Oh, free samples. Okay, he's got spoons up here and free samples if you'd like to taste. Okay, in the back. He'll be at the Welcome Center. Free samples of honey if you'd like to taste it. That's a gift, and we appreciate you sharing that. Hey, if anybody has interest in becoming a beekeeper or want more information on bees, talk to Kelly. That's a really great thing, and great way to make a difference for your neighbors and to be a blessing. So, okay, let's have a word of prayer, and then we'll head out. Oh, wait. So questions for next week, okay? Think about your vocation. And just a second here. Here we go. So remember that vocation is a divine calling to be a Christian in every mode of life. And I think Kelly's modeled that for us well. Public as well as private, religious as well as secular, adult as well as juvenile. So it's ways that that Jesus inhabits all public life. And so the questions are, what does your vocation teach you about the nature of God? What does your vocation teach you about being made in the image of God? What does your vocation teach you about the community you serve? And what have you learned about the kingdom through your vocation? Okay, so be thinking about those. Next week we'll share some more really fun stuff coming too down the pipe. We're going to have, here in 2 weeks, we're going to have our end of summer event on Wednesday night at Indian Creek Baptist Camp. That's going to be a lot of fun. But as we lean into the fall, we're going to be doing something together here on Wednesday nights called Spiritual Pathways. And this is going to be some of the most interesting stuff I think we could do as a church body. And I really think it's going to be freeing for us, and it's just going to be wonderful. Looking forward to that together. And that'll be 9 weeks together there, going into fall. So I think that'll be a great time for us as well in here. And we'll hear some ways that God continues to make us different, all for the common goal of building the kingdom. So, all right, let's have a word of prayer. Lord, we just thank you tonight that we can be together, and we thank you, Father, for signs of fruitfulness in your kingdom and the way that bees remind us of how wonderful your kingdom is and how extravagant and how incredibly complex, and yet, Lord, how all things are centered for a common goal. And we thank you, Lord. We want to be centered for a common goal as a church. So, Lord, put us to work where we need to be put to work. But, Lord, may it all be for that common goal. And we thank you, Lord Jesus, for your love for us. Help us to love you more, love one another more. And may we do that by the Spirit's power in our lives to the glory of your name, Father. It's in your name we pray, Jesus. And all of God's people said together, amen. All right. Give Kelly just a minute here to get back to the Welcome Center with that live hive. I can't believe you got me with that. It was good to be together. I did say that. But I didn't think it'd be appropriate to say pun intended during a prayer. So I didn't say that, Scott. You did? All right. So if you have any other questions, feel free to talk to Kelly out in the Welcome Center. God bless you guys. Have a great night. Thanks for being here.